Hi, I'm Mark, and I like to talk about UK politics and Brexit, but from an outside view. Although I do know the UK from the inside as well, so don't worry. He has only been in office for a few weeks and wants to take rapid, tough action against criminal smuggling gangs. Keir Starmer is demanding here that Europe pool resources and is investing 100 million euros. At his first participation in a summit of the European Political Community, the EPG, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer called on the participating countries to break up smuggling gangs. "We must pool our resources," said Starmer. "Intelligence information and tactics must be exchanged and smuggling routes must be interrupted. In addition, more must be done to combat the causes of flight, that means conflicts, climate change, and extreme poverty." At the EPG meeting in the English county of Oxfordshire, other states called for cooperation against the criminal gangs. "There is an empire at work that profits from human misery and despair," said Starmer, whose Labour Party has been in power now in Great Britain for just 3 weeks. In addition to the EU members, the EPG also includes other European countries that work together in areas such as politics and security. NATO representatives have also been invited. The EPG was founded in 2022 at the suggestion of French President Emmanuel Macron. It is a separate institution that is not connected to the EU or the Council of Europe, and there are no votes or a final declaration. At the summit, Starmer announced funds of £84 million for projects in Africa and the Middle East. This is intended to support humanitarian aid, healthcare, and educational institutions. The previous Conservative government wanted to deport people who come to the country without the necessary papers to Rwanda. Keir Starmer rejects this. Instead, he wants to strengthen border protection with a new structure. And according to the Times, Starmer is also hoping for an agreement with France to take back people who have been registered irregularly. In return, the newspaper says, he could offer to take in unaccompanied minors and their families in the UK. After the EPG summit, he did meet French President Macron for dinner. The Prime Minister also assured that he does not want to withdraw from the European Convention on Human Rights. His predecessor, Rishi Sunak, has threatened to do so in order to be able to enforce his tough asylum policy. And Starmer said he wanted to reorganize relations with the EU. However, his country's return to the community of nations has already been ruled out. The British resentment of the Tories has given Labour an impressive majority, but the result obscures a worrying trend. Keir Starmer has 5 years now to save the country from the radicals. Democracy is the right to kick the government out of power, as we know, and the British made use of this in the last election. They have had enough of the Tories, who had driven the country into the ground in recent years in government. The anger of the people swept Keir Starmer into power, and during the election campaign he avoided every risk and did not inspire enthusiasm, though. Starmer now commands a majority in the House of Commons that has not been seen since Tony Blair's victory in 1997. Labour has more than 410 seats and the Conservatives, the largest opposition party, have less than 125. And at first glance, Starmer's victory seems so comfortable that it should be difficult to drive him out of Downing Street again anytime soon. The Tories warned before the election day of 20 years of Starmer and a supermajority. The concept makes sense in the USA, but not in the UK, where a large majority gives the Prime Minister hardly any additional rights. In reality, the result is not as clear as it seems. Starmer received fewer votes than the socialist Jeremy Corbyn did when he lost the election in 2019, and they are just distributed much more effectively this time. Support for Starmer is superficial. He is not loved, only tolerated, and in addition, voters are more fickle than ever. In 2019, they gave Boris Johnson a majority. They could punish Starmer at the next election, just as they have now done with the Tories. And if things go badly, the only alternative to the incumbent will be a right-wing populist candidate. Nigel Farage received more than 4 million votes last time, and now he will try to dismantle what is left of the Conservatives. Farage's rise, or that of a similar candidate, is the scenario that almost all observers in London fear. It means that Starmer has 5 years to save the country from these radicals, as I said. And Starmer promises good governance, but then you have to govern well in order not to disappoint. And Keir Starmer is not a born entertainer. He speaks long-windedly and dully, and the TV debates with him were not good television. In his seriousness, he is kind of reminiscent of Olaf Scholz. But Starmer, as I said, promises good governance, but he really has to pay up on this. To do this, he needs not only skill, but also courage. And the biggest problem facing the the newest Prime Minister is the apathy in the country. The election campaign has shown that many Britons no longer trust politicians to improve their lives. And the mistrust runs deep and is understandable. After years of austerity, schools are crumbling in the country. The police, courts and the state health system are so woefully underfunded that huge investments would be needed for the state to function reasonably well. But Starmer cannot afford that. He inherited empty coffers from the Tories. The debt ratio is around 100%, and Labour therefore wants to stimulate the economy and invest the tax revenues generated in this way in state services. And Starmer promises the highest growth of all G7 countries. Hardly anyone knows how this is to be achieved in the long term. The British economy has been stagnating for years, and immigration figures are already too high for many Britons. And Brexit has destroyed confidence in the country. Tom Baldwin, author of a Starmer biography, has recently been quoted as saying that the new Prime Minister will dare to take far more risks in government than his cautious election campaign would suggest. Starmer should listen to him, because he urgently needs a new narrative after the election. The old one, put your money on me if you want to get rid of the Tories, will no longer work. Perhaps the best chance Labour now has is a rapprochement with the EU. The dreadful B word was hardly mentioned in the election campaign, although 60% of Britons now believe Brexit was a mistake. And Labour has drawn numerous red lines for electoral reasons. No customs union, no return to the single market, no free movement of people. But even within these red lines, a lot is possible. And red lines do not always last forever, especially in the UK. And Starmer is now faced with the task of creeping up on the EU without being punished by Leave voters. The EU might think about approaching him discreetly. We saw how not to do this in April. Back then, in the middle of the election campaign, Ursula von der Leyen publicly proposed an agreement that would have allowed young Europeans to study or work in Great Britain for 4 years. Conversely, young Britons would have been able to live in the EU. But the English press cried out, portraying the idea as Brexit fraud, and the pressure quickly became so great that even Starmer rejected the proposal. The right-wing populists are on the rise across Europe in some places. Their rise now threatens not only the periphery, but the entire continent. And even in a country like France, many people are apparently thinking, we've tried it with everyone else. Now it's the right's turn. Although the last election was quite a surprise here. In Great Britain, things aren't quite there yet. After 14 years of Tories, the British are now giving Keir Starmer a chance, and he should take it. He may only have that one chance. And if you want to know more, the next one is right here in the end screen. I'll see you there. I'll be back.